messing around with some of the settings, and hopefully this is going to work out good. We'll see what happens. Dealing with some allergies, which is kind of kicking my butt right now, but hopefully I can still do an okay job on this. Well, I'm not going to bore you with the details of the settings, but I'm hoping it provides a better experience. We'll see. Eventually someone will watch one of these videos and give me some input. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of Mysteries After Dark. I am your host, Jerry, like I would be anyone else. Well, who knows? On tonight's episode, the title kind of says it all. Am I real? Are you real? Quantum consciousness, quantum mind. Come on my radar a while back. I thought it was kind of an interesting concept, and I figured, well, hey, why not make an episode about it and share some of what I found in researching it with y'all, and then, of course, give you some of my opinions or thoughts, and we'll see what happens. So, let me ask you, do you think it's possible that life, you, me, the birds and the bees, could this all perhaps just be the best video game ever built? Could we all be plugged in, maybe sitting on our bed 1,000 years from now, reliving some of the, I guess we'll say, the greatest hits of humanity? Maybe these things that we see in the skies that are obviously not made by human hands, at least not with today's technology. Perhaps these are the caretakers that watch over the systems, the programming. Like many of you, I'm sure, well, when I watched The Matrix, I guess, something about that resonated with me. And of course, being an actual living, breathing creature plugged in offers far more comfort than being, let's say, a NPC, just nothing more than algorithms dictating how we conduct our daily lives and move about. Perhaps the prophets, the saviors, the gods, demons, whatever of the past, perhaps these people found a way to hack the code. They found the interface or a way to manipulate the algorithm, something that allowed them to construct or deconstruct, create, and destroy at will, at their choosing. Perhaps nothing's real. All we are is a simulation, perhaps being ran by humanity in the distant future, or perhaps by an intelligence so alien, so foreign to us, we simply cannot comprehend the meaning, the reason. Tonight, we're going to delve into the different theories being proposed about our reality, about it being nothing more than, let's say, a construct. And as frightening as it might be to consider this is all a simulation, there is actually evidence that points to the possibility that nothing is real. Sorry, I just had a message come up. I can think of a lot better places, times to live. Yes. I'll take a couple thousand years from now, or ancient Egypt might be interesting. So, but there is some evidence, believe it or not, that points to the possibility that nothing is real. We are caged, confined, merely imprinted on circuits. Every game that we play, every simulation that a scientist runs on a computer, all of that is governed by the speed of the processor. It doesn't matter how in-depth or realistic, it doesn't matter how hard the software developer might attempt to scrub all of the evidence pointing to it being a simulation or a game. There will always be a way to notice or observe or test the speed of the processor within that matrix. So keep that in mind. The proponents for this theory, they say that we have just such an indicator. We do know that the or what the maximum processing speed of this artificial existence happens to be. In the simplest of terms, it is 186,000 miles per second. That's 186,000 miles per second. If that number sounds familiar to you, like you may have heard it in school, that happens to be the speed of light. How long it takes the construct to bring an image to us so that we may perceive and process it. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking computers, they run at the speed of light, right? The internet, it transmits information at the speed of light, doesn't it? No, not even close. Not at all. The processing speed for this simulation, the technology advanced enough to propagate and to run this system, if in fact that is what it is, just to create it reality, it would be between 80 and 100 times beyond what we have right now. So this is where things get interesting. For those of you that listen to me know that I am a physics geek. I absolutely love numbers. Now that we have at least an idea of how advanced this hypothetical processor would be versus what we have today, we can actually crunch some numbers, and that will give us an approximation of how far into the future we are currently, or how many years more advanced a species is that would be running this particular simulation. And I did this to kind of be goofy, but it's all right. So follow along. For this, we're all going to take a moment and thank Dr. Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel. The guy is a genius, and he gave us Moore's Law. Essentially, every 2 years, for those of you aware, yes, he did originally say 18 months, but he did revise it and state that every 2 years, computing power doubles. So using his methodology, his Moore's Law, these aliens, or if it's us, it's just about 15 years from now, right? Wait a minute, 15 years, that can't be right. It's not. I like to sprinkle my episodes with science. If you're unaware of Dr. Moore or Moore's Law, look into it. It's kind of interesting. It was very effective. In many ways, it has already become obsolete. And in the year 2025, it will be completely so. It will no longer have any bearing on the calculation of how or with what frequency the power of computers double. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I thought you guys might like it, maybe not. But even with all that, even getting to that point, there's still going to be fundamental computation limits. In order to have a system that can operate at the speed of light, we would need a drastic and radical change from the technologies that we currently utilize, that we currently have available. And even though the speed of light may be the limiting speed of the server being used to generate this reality, if that is the case, honestly, perhaps it's being run on a child system, something far slower than an adult might have. How many of us are going to buy a $5,000 laptop with an Intel i9 or an AMD Ryzen 7 for their 8-year-old? Most likely they're going to get the $400 one. So whatever is being used, whatever technology it is, I would say, honestly, we're talking something that's several hundred, possibly thousands of years down the road. Look at the detail. If this is a simulation, and at least from our understanding, each one of us is unique. Okay, yeah, we all have arms, legs, fingers, toes, hopefully a head. There's a lot of similarities, but eye colors, flakes or freckles in the eyes or in the coloring, or freckles on the face, varying skin tones, varying hair patterns, hair length, hair color. There's a lot of variables in this for it to be a simulation. And something else I think that kind of drives a nail in it, but what do I know? Illness. There are so many different types of illnesses in this reality. I mean, we're talking not just physical, but mental. I mean, what would be the point of that in a simulation? I mean, that is an unfathomable amount of data to be processing. So I don't know. It's just something kind of to think about. Again, the and also, I mean, we have to look at it in a different way from the developers, if there is, versus us. Maybe the creators of this, maybe they don't even have a physical body. They could be some kind of I don't know, an energy type of a being, and the complexity that we perceive ourselves as being in regards to them, it might be like you or I playing Minecraft or Roblox, all pixelated and dots and whatnot. So, I mean, again, we are still always evaluating everything from our perspective, and we like to be a little, I don't know, we like to think highly of ourselves on that evolutionary ladder. With the Minecraft, there is something else I'm going to tie that into, and that could be a clue. At the quantum level, and this gets kind of freaky, at the quantum level, we are pixelated. You, me, everything, the planet, the universe, all of it. We are at a quantum level pixelated, and that it is possible that is the resolution limit within this hypothesized simulation. And that fact about the pixelation is one of the main reasons that some scientists, I mean, even Elon Musk, why these people are even considering the possibility that we're not real, that this could be a simulation. And just thinking here, if the simulation perhaps allows the characters, us, to perceive the reality, to perceive it versus creating it as an always running reality, maybe that could decrease the needed computing power to create all of this. If it's not really always there, it's only there when we see it, that would make it a little bit easier. And if that were the case, Schrodinger's cat takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it? We are all the cat, and every one of us, we're all the cat in the box as long as no one's looking, the whole universe. So I got to give a shout out to Neil deGrasse Tyson. He chimed in on this. And honestly, I like the guy. Do I disagree with him on some things vehemently? So yeah, maybe. But when he was asked, what do you think the odds are that this is a simulation, that we're living in a simulated reality, he said better than 50-50. Well, he used to. This was a few years back. So he was asked about it. He came out and he laid out the reasoning, and he's like, it's actually a really good possibility. He's like, almost certainly, but I'll say better than 50-50. And over the course of time, a couple of years, he changed his mind, really just up until a couple of years ago. So using, not to lose anyone here, but using Bayesian statistics, it would seem that everything actually overwhelmingly pointed to this reality being a simulation. And then a good friend of his, Rich Gott, he's actually an old colleague from Princeton. He was at Princeton. He wrote the Doomsday. Gott's the author of the Doomsday Calculation. What he said with him changed his mind. So with Neil deGrasse Tyson, for a while there, his belief was that, the possibility that there are trillions of simulations. And what Gott pointed out is that we do not currently have the ability to continue the chain of simulations. And that can only mean one of two things. Either we are the original and we haven't created the means to do it yet, or we are the last link on that chain, and have not yet, within this simulation, created a means to reproduce another one. And I'm glad that that thought lets him sleep comfortably at night, but it doesn't seem practical to me. And the issue we could have, here's in my mind, here's the issue with that. Okay, we could have a billion or a trillion simulations being ran for pleasure, entertainment, or perhaps a study, to kind of see the evolutionary characteristics or different trails, different paths, the what ifs that could have happened. And it could all be ran with a beginning and all of it with an end, meaning that it would be ruled out. Those within it wouldn't have necessarily the ability to create that type of a simulation outright, that it wouldn't need to be a link in, 1,000-mile long chain. So that's just kind of a side note that I think about it. Rizwan Virk, computer scientist, author of the simulation hypothesis, he has an interesting thought. He stated, "I think it's more likely than not that we are in some kind of a simulation." He argues that the most probable outcome among three options is that an advanced civilization will survive long enough to be able to develop the technology to create various simulated worlds. This means that there are many simulated realities and that there's only one base reality, only one that's real per se. And with his thought of this is which is most likely, or which reality would you most likely be in? The 99 simulated realities or the one base reality? In obviously simple math, you're more than likely to be in one of the 99. Here's something else he pointed out, that reality is digital rather than physical. And here's how it is. Or here's his reasoning behind it. There's nothing in nature that duplicates an entire large physical object, particularly in an instant. But it's one nature. But it's pretty easy to duplicate information and then render that information as needed. We also have the observer effect, a phenomenon in physics in which the mere act of watching something can change it. And this is a real thing, by the way. According to Virk, that doesn't make sense if you live in a single physical reality. But in video games, we only render the world you need to see. That suggests we live in a rendered world where reality only exists when it is observed. And his argument's compelling. The guy's a genius. He's a graduate of MIT. He's a pioneer in video games. He's like the super tech guru. So I'm just looking at some of the messages going on. If you're listening to this at a later date and not on Mysteries After Dark on Facebook, you'll miss some of these cool conversations that take place every now and again. I can't help but to agree. It would be neat to start over in another time, another period. Anyway, back to Virk. I'm not saying that I buy into the simulation hypothesis, but the arguments for it, they can be persuasive. So those are, I guess you'll say, some overarching ideas that touch on the different possibilities of a simulation, but each possibility, that's going to have different implications, if that makes sense. Let me kind of break that down. Perhaps this is something similar to the Matrix. Our species, the human species, being utilized for some malevolent purpose. Each of us born within the machine, and from birth to death, we live within the constructed fantasy. But we will, in this scenario, we would never have the the blue pill or red pill option. And much as Morpheus pointed out, if the real world was some type of horrible wasteland, would we really want to wake up? Would we really want to become part of that? I think we would be happier in the dream, in the construct. Of course, there's also the possibility, and this one's probably more horrifying, that we're all just NPC. There is no waking up. There is no release or salvation. Our actions dictated by nothing more than some type of hyper advanced algorithm. There was a movie called The 13th Floor. Very, very good film dealing with, I guess you would say, a simulated reality. If you've not watched The 13th Floor, oh God, it's probably 20 plus years old now. I would recommend looking for it if this fascinates you. It was interesting to say the least. But, excuse me. At least in that movie, though, the 13th Floor, the characters had a way to escape. They could upload their computer consciousness, I guess we'll say, their artificial consciousness, and overwrite that of the living person, which would play their character. The simulated people would have blackouts, and during that time, they were actually being played by living humans set in the future. With that said, though, if this is nothing like, if this is just a simulation with nothing more than a developer, one developer that's running the whole thing, then there would be no way to truly escape it. I mean, perhaps you could upload your file or your data, whatever it would be considered in that reality, to their version of the internet. But we couldn't possibly understand how to do such things. There would probably be limits imposed upon our individual processing abilities, if that makes sense. Basically a limit upon our digital brain. And all of this leads me to something that I have been fascinated with for quite a while, and that is quantum consciousness. This deviates a little bit from the simulated reality, or I guess at least a version of it does. One scenario is that this is a construct, and we are all plugged in. Again, like the Matrix. God, I'm going to get sued. No. But the other one, that's the one that fascinates me the most. Everything is real. Okay, each of us, everything around you, it's all real. We all have independent consciousness. It's really us. But that consciousness is not within the body itself. It's not a process of the biological brain, but something else, something outside. Some argue in favor for this, and they kind of get out there with some of this. I think they missed the mark. So kind of what I wanted to do is kind of give you my my hypothesis, I guess we'll say. Okay, you ready? Are you sitting down? Do you have popcorn? There is the Jerry that's talking to you right now. But it's not who I am. It's not what I am. I have a consciousness. Some might call it a soul. And that's the real me. The brain's an enigma. Every day we're learning something new about this, chunk of fat between our ears. And we now have evidence that as the brain takes in information, it's processing that information in more than 3 dimensions, which is something hard to wrap our brains around, no pun intended. And then a new study published in late 2022 supports the idea that we are experiencing quantum actions within our brain. And this evidence is really pointing very, very strongly towards the facts that our brains, they're quantum, they're entangled. They're quantumly entangled with something, with a source. The chemicals, the gray matter, the fat, none of that accounts for human consciousness. It shouldn't be a byproduct of what we have, in our skull. And let me, I'll come to that in a minute. We have people that have quite literally lost half their brain yet seem completely unchanged. However, we have other people who have suffered a minor brain injury and suddenly they're a different person completely. So kind of going down on this hypothesis, or my thought, if you will, is that our brain is quantumly entangled with our consciousness, which resides elsewhere, and that consciousness is beyond anything we can comprehend. For example, I've never really mastered the piano. I maybe played a couple of keys once or twice. I can't even play a song, but that consciousness knows how to do it. But due to our brain, the brain that this consciousness is entangled with, having never done that action, the function of the body is going to be limited by the capacity or the capabilities of that brain as to what it has learned. This is why we've had people that have no musical ability, or a person that's illiterate, a person that's, they're horrible at math. And that person can suffer a brain injury and suddenly they can write symphonies or novels or understand physics. This has really happened. That damaged area of the brain, or that damage, has somehow removed a restriction. Some type of a governor will say that under normal circumstances only allows us to comprehend or perform the actions that we have already done. In the brain, one of my ideas here, the brain basically is nothing more than a transceiver. It transmits, it receives. If the wrong part gets damaged, the part that is directly in contact with that consciousness, that's when we have an issue. A person suffers a stroke or some other brain injury and suddenly cannot tie their shoes. It's because whatever was entangled, that receiver, whatever the part of the brain it was, that was the information inlet that allowed the consciousness to convey how to perform that task, was damaged. So it can no longer communicate with that consciousness or get that information from the soul. And I think maybe that has something to do with people having a brain damage, rewiring. The brain gets rewired, and suddenly they can do those things again. I think there's an easier way to understand it, perhaps, is that the body or the brain is a radio, and we have all these broadcasts going out, just like we do, towers, different channels. And for whatever reason, the body I'm in, it has the dial tuned to Jerry, and whatever body you're in has the dial tuned to you, if that makes sense. And you're picking up that information, and it's coming to, but it's not just a receiver. We're a transceiver, meaning we can also transmit back. And there's this communication, this entanglement that has occurred between the brain and the consciousness, or that frequency, I guess we would say. Maybe this maybe has something to do, or somehow it ties in with religion. If you let me get out here for 1 second, I'm just saying, in the Bible, there is a little thing about to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So once you are untangled or unplugged, you can then interact with that entity or that designer or that program developer. If he is or she is, whatever the case might be, if it is the developer of this program, then that entity is God. They created the construct. That entity is the one that lays out the rules to follow. And just like in a video game, sometimes players, they break the rules, but instead of being banned, your consciousness is, I don't know, sent somewhere horrible, fiery. No. Oh, that's horrible. But, all we have, just hypotheses, ideas, beliefs. We're all alone looking for these answers. We are in the dark in more ways than we understand. And what we are lacking is hard data, a conclusive answer. And I think, this is something that all of us seek over the course of our life. Religion, meditation, whatever the case might be. I don't know. As always, or as I sometimes like to do as of late, I want to leave you with a parting thought. Many of you listening to me might you might be too young to know about this, but undoubtedly some of you do. Okay, and if not, you can ask your parents. The old TVs from the 1960s and 70s and 80s. For those of you that had them, do you remember when you would turn them off or unplug them? The picture would not go immediately black as they do today. Instead, that image would close in on itself and create a small circle right in the middle of the screen, almost as though it were a tunnel of light. And we've had many people with near-death experiences report a tunnel or a corridor of light where they are sometimes met by other people as though our life were played out on an old television. And as it's being unplugged, all of those characters, they're all compacted, spiraling, clinging to life in the final moments before that they will blink out of existence, reaching out to greet you, hoping that you can keep the lights on, hoping that you can keep them from permanently going out, and perhaps as your life flashes before your eyes, it's just your data being rewound and erased to make way for another created character. Maybe that's why some people can remember a life that they never lived. All of the data wasn't completely scrubbed, and little bits of information remained imposed onto the new character. Perhaps when our time finally comes, well, you can go towards the light if you want. Me? I'm going to try to find the plug. Sorry, I thought that'd be kind of fun. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mysteries After Dark. That's it. We're over. It's done. I hope it was a good time. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Until next time, be safe. Bye.